Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Junkyard Digs. Today, our goal is to finish the Grand National and return it to its owner. And we want to do this all preferably before the end of the week. Let's see if we can get it done. So like I just mentioned, our goal is to finish the Grand National here in the next couple days. I believe the last time we were on camera, it randomly died on me, but it did fire back up. I'm gonna assume that's something to do with some component getting warm in the ignition system. We'll see if that happens again, hopefully not. Hopefully it's just good to go. Other than that, nothing has changed. Now our goals for this episode are to change the brakes out entirely so we have good brakes on the car because safety is really important when you have a car this fast. Next, we'll vacuum out the interior, clean everything up inside to the best we can. Make one critical change I did discover throughout visiting car shows through the summer and asking people about these cars, and then hopefully get this thing back to its owner in a good condition. Without further ado, let's get this sucker up on the lift and start tearing into it because we have a lot of work to do in a very little time. So with that, everything is in the air. Now we just need to start taking parts off. Good stuff. Thank you, Ben Pack, for being the best company ever. Before we get started today, I want to throw something in here quick. This video is going to be a little dry for the first 45 minutes or so. Most YouTubers, when we're doing these videos, leave out brake system tech. The reason is, it's such a tedious, long process. However, it is very necessary on older cars, especially those lacking today's safety features. The only thing you have keeping yourself alive is a lap belt and a good, functional, reliable brake system. So if you've never done brakes before, or you've done them only a couple times, or even want some tips for those people that do it often, I encourage you guys to stick around for the first 2/3 of the video. This car absolutely kicked my ass this week, and it took 3 days longer than usual to do brakes because I filmed it. But in the end, we were still able to get this car out and do some full boost pulls. Alright, let's get into it. So let's talk about some brake stuff. It's something we don't usually do on this channel. I usually gloss over this because at the end of the video, instead of the pinnacle, like point of the video. So GM brakes, pretty good. I like these caliper setups. I really like the slide pins and stuff we got going on here. These ones don't usually stick, they're pretty decent, but we're replacing them because they're cheap as hell, and we can. So 3/8 Allen wrench, a couple whacks. Those bolts come loose. Alright, there's our bottom pin. Alright, there's a top pin. Roll this caliper out of place. There we go. Yeah, those are about half gone. Yeah, you can see they're a little cracked up and embedded with stuff, so they definitely were not providing the ideal stopping power. Wheel bearings are making a little bit of noise, so I think I got some of them too. Wow, look at that pin. Fresh grease in there, it looks like. Where is it?
Most times when I pull those apart, it's just an old rusty nail that somebody shoves.
Yeah, that's you work on a lot of Chevys, see? All the Fords, they got a new pin each time. Yeah, that was literally a used pin that had broken in half. Probably could have used a little more preload on the bearing. Next step is to get this castle nut off. This will be a lot easier to see when we're going back together. Right now everything's covered in grease. Next we got a washer. And then our outer bearing. Ah yes, the classic 80s bearing. Plastic carriers.
Really?
I have seen this once before. It was my Fox body. Make sure you keep all of your old parts until you're completely done and you do like a couple 100 miles and make sure everything is good. Then you can throw them away. Alright, take our rotor off. There's our wheel seal right here, this black piece. And then we got our inner bearing. So I'm going to set this all off to the side because I don't want to throw any of this away until we know everything fits. Let's go ahead and get the spindle cleaned up and inspect a couple things while we're in here. And then we'll go ahead and start reassembling. Alright, spindle's looking pretty good. Got everything back here in our grease sling ring cleaned up. Now let's go grease some bearings. Alright, so let's talk a little bit of bearings. We've gone over this stuff in the past, but it's been a while, so no harm in doing a refresher, right? These are the new bearings, and just like the old ones, they have a plastic cage. Why? I don't know. They are Timken bearings, so it must truly be acceptable to have a plastic cage on a bearing. This is our outer, this is our inner. We're going to start with the inner because it's going to be a little bit bigger and easier for you guys to see. This is what's known as the bearing race. We already have these in our rotor, so we will not be using him. What we're going to do is make sure we got a clean hand. Good enough. Get yourself some grease. You're going to get dirty, so just commit to it. Get it in your palm. Grab your bearing. Get a knuckle through that. Good, nice, tight grip. There's some play in this cage right here. So what you're going to do is push that away to open up this far side right here. Now you're going to use this gap in the bearing to bite into the grease. Just like a little hungry hippo. And as you're doing that, you're pulling it back and it's pressing that grease into that gap. They make tools for this that do this job way faster, but I don't have one. I've just always done it by hand. As you go, you'll notice it will begin to squeeze out the top, and that means that's good right there. So we're going to rotate a little bit, press our cage back up again, and start the hungry hippo bearing. Chomping away. A couple more dots came through. Rotate, do it again. And if you're repacking old bearings, you will see it push all the black grease out first, and then your color of grease will come through. Another thing you can do is use this to clean your hand off. And at least on the smaller bearings it works a little easier, but repack it all to a new spot. Work that grease in. And we're going to continue this until we get these to come up all the way around. And then we'll give it a spin and do it one more time all the way around so that we know we're full of grease, just like myself. Everything's looking good. It only takes me 1 or 2 bites to get bubbles to start to pop through the top in each spot, which means our bearing is full. So this one's done. I'm going to repeat that for this and all the other ones, and we'll get them installed onto our rotor. Alright, so we have everything greased up as far as bearings go. At this point, we're going to get more grease and sit down with our rotor for a little bit. So flip this guy over. We're going to want to be as careful as we can about not getting grease on these surfaces, and then before we install them on the car permanently, we also want to clean these with brake clean because they put a sealant on here to help preserve this from rusting. That needs to be stripped away before you start using the brakes. So let's start things off with a good old glob of grease all around the inside of this guy. I'm going to just fill that whole cavity up with grease. Everyone greases their bearings different. This is how I do it. I just the most grease you can get in there, because I mean, you can't have not enough if you put as much as you possibly can. That's greased up. Drop our inner bearing in. More grease. Smear it all around the top of this bearing to pack that in one more time. The idea here is that these bearings, if they lose enough grease, they start becoming warm, and then all the grease in this cavity will turn to a liquid and refill the bearings, and then they'll cool back down. Alright, so now we've got our wheel seal. Before we put this on though, I am going to verify that this is the right size wheel seal on the spindle. This is indeed the right size wheel seal, so we can go ahead and install this. Alright, fresh bearing on the back side, new wheel seal. Let's go ahead and prop this thing up in the car and do our front bearing and nut and everything else. Alright, time to put everything back on. Off camera, I've cleaned up our washer and our nut, get all the old grease off those. No point in doing all this if you're just going to put dirty grease right back in it. Now we'll get our rotor with a fresh bearing and seal. Seat that seal. There we go. Looking good. Now we grab, once again, our grease, believe it or not. And you're going to try to get as much around there as you can. Just kind of squeeze it in there if you're able to. If you got small fingers, just pack that stuff in there. Grease is a lot quicker and cheaper than new bearings. Alright, now our outer bearing. You should push all that grease in a little further when we seat him. Okay, there it goes, we're good. Get our specialty washer in there. And now for the nut. And now this is the part where everyone disagrees how to do preload on a bearing.
3 Ugga-Duggas.
Everyone says something different.
I'm sure there's some book set torque load that you're supposed to
Yep,
put on it.
they say turn it till it gets hard to turn and back it off a quarter, set it to a torque, do this, do that. I am not going to advise what to do. Google it, I don't know. So I usually go till I feel preload, which is right there. And there you can tell there is easy to spin. And as you spin, it will move grease out of the bearings. So yeah, there's definite force there. So now I'm going to back off, hopefully, to the nearest cancellation. Alright, now we put our pin back on, fill our grease cap with more grease, slap that on there, replace our soft line, our caliper, and we're done with the front brakes. Let's make it happen. Alright, and with a little bit of heat, we're able to get our fitting loose and get our old soft line and caliper off. Now usually I want to stop this from dripping so we don't drain our master cylinder and have to re-bleed it, but we're replacing it in this case since we're switching braking systems, so I don't really care today. Let her drain. Alright, let's get our new components on there. While Phoenix is working on getting our rear drums broke loose, I've got our soft line on. I'm going to take this time to wash off, or not wash, but chemically strip, I guess, would be the appropriate term, all the sealant off the brakes. It'll leave a little bit of your rag behind. That's okay, it's fine. Same thing for the backside. Now we're ready to go ahead and put our caliper on. Yeah, that's what came off. So good stuff. I'm gonna take this time to put some anti-seize on our pads and our caliper on this piston right here. Whoop, there we go. As well as any sliding points on the pads, which will be these guys. And if I remember right, I think that's it for a GM. Make sure you're not getting it on any pad surfaces or the rotor or anything, because believe it or not, anti-seize is not really what you want on your brakes. Kind of fundamentally opposites. Now you want to make sure before you put this on that you have the right side, so that when this is installed, your brake bleeder is on the top. So we'll get this out of our way. Got our nice clean rotor. We will work this guy into place, and it may take a little work because you might have to compress the piston a little bit. Alright, so there we go. Our caliper's bolted on. Everything in here is anti-seized. Got our new rubber line. Lines are tightened up. New wheel bearings, new wheel sill, new brake pads, new rotor. Everything right here, brand new and good to go. We'll go ahead and repeat this on the other side and then move on to the backs. Alright, it comes time now to do everyone's favorite part. Drum brakes. I actually don't mind drum brakes. I almost prefer them, working on them over discs, but I'm weird. One thing I don't like is taking off the drums, and we've already done the other side and we know it's a freaking nightmare. So we're going to show you a couple tips and tricks for getting seized drums off of the vehicle, and these are really truly stuck on there. They're not going anywhere. So first thing we're going to want to do is oil them. As you can see, we already have. And then we're going to remove any surface on which it can bind to, which is not only this center hub, but all 5 of these studs. Thankfully, we can pound the studs through to the backside, so that's exactly what we're going to do. And then we'll oil everything again, put some heat at it, and start just beating it with hammers. Now, I don't have new drums ordered, so I do need to try to preserve these. If you have new drums ordered, honestly, the easiest option right now, get a 5-pound sledge, beat the shit out of this rim of this drum until this thing cracks in half, because it's cast iron. It will not take much. They will just split right open. Then you pull the pieces off, put your new drum on after everything's cleaned up. But since we're trying to save these, we're going to pound these studs through to free up 5 more points of rust. Yeah, bigger hammers work. Yep. There goes one. I also highly suggest getting a buddy to help you on this stuff. At this point, we can get some penetrance in the cracks between the wheel plate and the actual drum. A little more right there. And we're just going to continue tapping it and see if we can break those loose. It looks to be a strong nah. So at this point, we resort to everyone's favorite, heat. I'm going to go around this and heat up the flat spots between all the holes here. And try to increase the diameter of this center hole. Try her now. Oh, it's fine. Oh, hey. That's all it takes. A little calamity. Now if you're lucky, this will slide right off, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say we're probably not lucky. Nope, it's the pads again. So, get your buddy, get 2 pry bars.
Watch your knee.
Get a hammer and pry against the back of the backing plate and shock that free. It's not even moving anymore.
So this side's good. We're just gonna put the wheel back on. It still spins.
Yeah, brakes are done. All right, so it's already the next day at this point, and I decided this is not working, and I cannot get this damn rotor off on top of that. Looks like we might have cracked it already, so we're just gonna finish this thing off. Basically, if you can get something in between here and the backing plate, you can try to work it forward with a couple of them and shock this axle and the actual drum, and it'll work itself off until it gets clear of the front of this, and then you can get in here and work it out. You basically have to fight the ridge that the shoes build into the drum. As the shoes wear into the drum, they don't cover the entire surface, they leave a little bit in the ends. And since they're adjusted out, which if your adjuster wheels work, you can in theory roll them back in and it won't be a problem, but usually they don't. But you have to just beat on this and pull on this until it clears that ridge, and you essentially make the shoes go like this against the spring tension, and you can get that off. I thought this would have been a good example to show you guys how to do that, but it's not. A slide hammer helps sometimes, otherwise just a lot of prying. But at this point, we have misshapen this thing so badly that it's not even worth putting back on the road. Plus I see there's a little literal cracking starting, so we're just gonna finish it off and take it off the easy way. Whew. Holy shit. GM really made some drums. Yep. Just like that. There we go. So, like I said, unfortunately, this thing's going to be out of round and all sorts of bent up and dented and unbalanced now, so it will need replaced. Thankfully, O'Reilly's has new ones in stock for, unfortunately, 50 bucks a piece, but they should be here at noon, so let's go ahead and strip these brakes down, show you how to do stuff with drum brakes. All right, the time has come to redo our drum brakes. I already have the other side done, so I know what I'm gonna talk about, and let me tell you, there's a lot to talk about. These G-body drum brakes are a bit of a pain in the ass, not gonna lie. They're probably top 3 most difficult drum brakes I've worked on. But there's a couple tips I can give you guys to help with any drum brake system that's going to be a huge advantage at you getting this done with minimal swearing and throwing of tools. Number 1, absolute most important thing about drum brakes. When you're starting this, go ahead and pull both drums off at the same time. Get the car up on jack stands, a lift, whatever you have. Pull both drums off. Inspect everything in here. Decide which side has less broken components or is more thoroughly assembled, and don't touch it. go to the other side and start to disassemble it. Leave one side of your drum brakes completely assembled so you have a reference of how it goes back together. Even if you have 2 people working and you think you're super smart and you got pictures, don't do it. Trust me, I've screwed myself over on this way too many times. Do only one side at a time, and when this side is done and properly adjusted and functioning and you know it's perfectly right, go do the other side, because now the side you just did will have all new hardware and it will be fully assembled for reference to the second side. So that is my absolute biggest advice I give about drum brakes, and probably where most people go wrong is they get confused how they go back together. Like I just said, I just did the other side. I literally had to come over here and look at this about 15 times to make sure that all my springs were correct. Tip number 2 is about parts. When it comes time to get new shoes and or drums, you also want to buy a hardware kit. Trust me, it's a lot easier to just spend the like $8 for a hardware kit and replace all this hardware than it is to do all this and then have something break and then you're stuck for half the day trying to find hardware. The other thing you want to buy is a self-adjuster kit. Now this is the star wheel and whatever is incorporated in the brake system for the adjusters. Fords have a steel cable that goes right here that loves to break. Like they all break. This will literally save you time not having to clean up the star wheel or this linkage, and it gives you a few extra parts. It should go without saying that some brake systems in the rear are a lot simpler than others and use fully symmetric pads and hardware, which it doesn't matter which side it's on, left or right. But this car is one of the examples that does not. The pads are symmetrical, so the front and rear, there's no difference. They're literally stamped the same part number, which is a good way to figure out if you're gonna have an issue front and rear. But when it comes to hardware, you're gonna wanna look at either the part number here, it's gonna have an L or an R, sometimes at the end of it, or sometimes stamped on the hardware itself, you'll have an L or an R. Another way, since it's still all together on one side, is to take the hardware you've taken off on the side you're working on, and literally hold the new and the old piece next to each other and see if it's the right side. Same goes for springs. On a G-body, some of these springs are left side and some of these are right. Compare them to the old hardware. Don't throw your old hardware away until everything's working. I know I say that a lot, but that's how important this is. Carburetors, brakes, whatever you're working on, keep the old stuff until it's properly proven to be functional. So yeah, real quick before we take these off, recap. Leave one side together, get a hardware kit, verify left and right, get an adjuster kit, verify left and right. With that, it's time to take our brakes apart. Here's what you're gonna need. A screwdriver, preferably one that you happen to bend in high school, and it's just the perfect bend for doing brakes, and a channel locks. That's it. That's all I've ever used to do brakes for disassembly. There's like 2 more tools for reassembly, but, oh, and safety glasses. I don't wear these things nearly as much as I should in the shop, but I will wear them for brakes because when you're taking these springs off, dust and dirt and rust and shit goes flying, and springs sometimes go flying, so safety third. All right, let's start taking these apart. Like I said, these G-body brakes are a little bit more difficult than most brakes, so this is gonna be a G-body specific example, but the premise is still pretty much the same. So even though your other side is still assembled, that doesn't mean now's a terrible time to take a few photos of which direction the tongs on these springs are facing, if there's any special hardware here or here or here or anything, so on and so forth. One thing I do is when I take them all off, I lay everything on the ground exactly how it's oriented here so that I can just look down and have a second closer reference. First thing we're gonna do is take off this spring that is farther out on this upper pin. Second thing we want is the spring holding this pad forward. That one's best with the channel locks. Now we're gonna open up our channel locks and start taking out these retainer pins on each side. Just grab them, press them in, get your fingers on the back, spin that pin, pop that guy right out. Same with this side. Press it in, turn it with your fingers on the back, away she comes. Okay, a couple things to fill out. I'm gonna stop and try to figure out where those went. This conical one was sitting right here. So put him on the ground. This is the pin retainer for this guy, so that's not a big deal. That right there is something I need to pay attention to. This side in the back has this cap. And I should probably mention, when you're looking at the other side for reference, they are a mirror image of each other. This will always be on the back. That's not gonna be on the front over there, it's going to be on the back. That spring will be on the front, that one will be on the rear. So remember, don't get it mixed up. They're mirror image left to right. At this point, I'll pop this whole assembly off. And just like that, we're ready to open up these shoes, pull out this center bar, keep him. There's a few things in here we need to keep that are not getting thrown away because we don't have new ones. This bar, minus the spring, is one of them, but we'll leave him on so I remember which way he goes. Open the shoes up. There's a little piece right here that is the emergency brake pawl. He will need taken off. And there we go. Our brakes are off. At this point, I will remove the wheel cylinder, which on these G bodies is really weird. It's a like clip on the back that holds it in. I'm not entirely fond of it, but whatever. Either way, I'm gonna turn the camera off for a moment and get the torch out and heat that line up and try to get this guy off without snapping our brake line. And then we'll be back for some cleanup and reassembly. All right, we've got our wheel cylinder off. I ended up snapping the line, so I get to build 2 new lines. Yay. Either way, before we get our new wheel cylinder in there, we want to clean up our backing plate and get everything ready for brakes. So there's 7 spots we need to clean on the backing plate and 1 up here. These are going to be the contact points for the brake shoes on the backing plate. I like to use a drill with a little wire brush on the end. We got 1 here. We got 1 here. And there's supposed to be a checkered pattern, but these things are worn down. Wow. 1 here. Tell you what, they got their money out of this car. And the last one here. Now that your 6 contact points are cleaned off, and you can see the checkered pattern in this one, that's what they're supposed to look like, not all worn down like this. Go ahead and clean your center post up top. While you're here, I like to just give everything a light brushing. And we should be good to go. One thing I do like to do when the brake drums are really rusted on, such as in this vehicle, is I will take a sharp screwdriver and hit all the way around and get all the rust and metal that's flaked off in that cavity out, and then go around with this and clean up the face. That will keep the next set of drums from seizing. So now that we got all that clean, I'm going to take a couple moments and put our new wheel cylinder on. Alright, at this point, everything is cleaned up here. I've gone to the wire wheel and cleaned up these 2 pieces as well, which we'll be reusing. We have one last step before we start putting all of our pieces back on. We need to get our anti-seize and put some goo on those 6 points we cleaned off. As well as the ends of the pistons on the new wheel cylinder. And the center post up here on both the spring mounts and where the shoes sit. While we got it out, we're going to go ahead and put a little bit right here. Alrighty, it is officially time for the real fun to start. First things first, grab your brake shoes. Like I mentioned earlier, some are symmetrical, some are not. These ones are. You can tell that because they have every hole on each side, and they also have the same part number. While I'm on the subject, these are Power Stop brake pads from Rock Auto. They're pretty much what I run on everything. I've been running these for years and never had a pad or a shoe fail or scream or make a lot of dust. They've been excellent brakes. I love Power Stops. And they are inexpensive as hell because they're from Rock Auto. At this point, we need to make sure that we get our springs and retainers ready. The Grand National has 2 different length retainer springs for here and here. The long one will go on the front, and the short one will go on the rear. And the short one is going to have a special setup with a cup on the bottom for holding a thing I'll show you in a second. And here's that thing. Now we are going to anti-seize the back here and anti-seize the front where this guy will sit so that he has good lubricated range of motion. I'm gonna stick our pins in here so I don't lose them. Bloop, 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 bloop. Now this guy's gonna chill right here on the rear brake shoe. I have to be careful not to get anti-seize on the shoes itself, by the way. Before we put this on, we need to take our emergency brake lever and get him situated in this little triangle hole up here. There we go, just like that. He's gonna chill out back there and hopefully never get used. Pretty much anything older than 15 years, don't use the e-brake. If you live in the north, it's going to stick and then you're gonna be stranded wherever you used it. Now at this point, either grab a pliers and compress this, or if you have strong thumbs, compress it like such and reach through and give that pin a little twist with your finger on the back side. And there you go. That one's ready to go. At this point, we need to take a break from the shoes and get this bar in here. There's a wide side and a narrow side on this car. Our spring is gonna go on the narrow side. It also has a jog over. We're gonna make that face out with the spring forward. And the wide side is gonna grab both the shoe and that parking brake pawl back there. We also wanna put a little bit anti-seize on this guy on either end because he's making contact with moving parts. All right, he's looking happy. Let's get him installed. And boop. Now he's just gonna chill there. He's not getting fully installed yet. Now we can grab our front shoe and get him on there. And I'm more so worried about just getting this guy aligned and installed right now. Okay, got it. That sucked. Now we need to make sure this spreader bar gets reinstalled because of course he fell out during that. Perfect. Next up, this retainer plate. He's gonna go right here. Now this guy is gonna loop into the end over here and come up around this center post. Nope, no he's not. Okay, well he's supposed to. All these springs that we're about to install now are gonna be high tension. So remember, safety glasses. Now this little curl right here is what holds these in place. To know that you have it installed correctly, stick that end straight in the hole and let it hang. And it should stick out straight at you. And then you just loop it over in the direction it's supposed to go, and that spring should be pretty close up against that shoe. Now, it does want to stay out a little bit, but that's totally normal. Ta-da! And there we go. We got one shoe hung and sprung in place. Make sure that bar you can't see behind this is still in place. Grab your rear spring. I will admit this one is a good bit trickier. And there you go. Alright, everything up top is done. We have shoes that are staying centered. Now we're going to take our star wheel and unscrew this guy all the way so that we can anti-seize all these threads. Anti-seize your threads, anti-seize the ends, anti-seize the button up top, put the little thrust washer on, put the cap on, and screw it all the way down. Grab our spring. This side is red, the other side is white. Get him hooked into place. Grab our channel locks, because that's going to be the easiest tool for this one. And pull him over to the hole. Sometimes it's actually better without that in. Last but not least, our honeycomb spring is going to go right here. And there you go. That is how you put together a set of drum brakes in the least painful way possible. Remember, leave the other side for a reference. Wear safety glasses. Take your time. Study it all well before you take it apart, or at least study the other side before you start this, because stuff needs to be in order from back forward on like this pin. At this point, I will adjust these brakes until they're touching the drums just right. We'll put our new drums on, bend up some new rear brake lines, and we'll be ready to move up to the master cylinder and pedals. Alright, we got our brake lines fixed. Everything's replaced behind there. It is time for me to adjust the drums, and I immediately realized that I made a mistake. Thankfully, I went over to the other side and verified. I have this spring in backwards. It needs to clip in from the front, not from the rear, so it doesn't bind against the star wheel. Also, you may have noticed in the video that that thing slipped off, but I didn't notice. So that's why you keep the other side for reference and you double check your work. I've come this far, we might as well go all the way. New drums, same as discs up front. You need to clean the surface off with brake clean. If you want to go the extra mile, then you can do this on the spindles up front. Get some caliper paint and paint these so they don't rust. Basically, all you're doing when you're adjusting drums is removing that so you have access, as you can see. Then putting the drum on and reaching through here with your screwdriver and turning this wheel. And what this is doing is spreading that bottom linkage, therefore spreading the overall dimension of the brakes. And you want to do that until they just drag. And when they just drag, you need to reach in with the screwdriver and push the brakes left and push the brakes right by prying against whatever you can land on, and keep doing that again and again, because what might be happening is that you're all the way over here and you're just dragging, when in reality you still have 1/8 of an inch over here. So do this with the shoes behind the drum until you're dragging all the way around. If after you do your brakes, your pedal is firm at the bottom but soft up top, like your brakes feel good, but you just have a lot of pedal travel, that is an adjustment that needs made in the drums. You need to spread these out a bit more and eat up more of that pedal travel. All right, now let's get these finished and move up to the front. All right, there we have ourselves some painted and properly adjusted rear drums. And not to look pretty, more so not to rust, some painted front brakes. So as many of you pointed out in the comments and have said online and la-di-da, the Hydroboost system in these cars is trash. It was like the first attempt at Hydroboost, and it's an electric over hydraulic system, and there's sensors and accumulators, and they all love to go bad. And I'm looking at that motor and I think it's just a big pile of rust. I'm like, there's no way that's going to work. So what everyone suggests is, well, just get regular vacuum brakes from a Regal, which should work just fine. I mean, the only reason they have Hydroboost is so if I had a guess, you can brake stand under boost. But I mean, if you ask me, you use the vacuum at idle to get the brakes set, and then you just hold it while it builds boost. I mean, you're not applying more pressure, it's already there. So I think vacuum brakes should be just fine. With that being said, I need to source a set of vacuum brakes, which means we need to change pedal assemblies. It's just gonna suck, and put a vacuum booster and vacuum master cylinder in, and probably, now I'm thinking of it, probably redo some lines as well. Woohoo. The hardest part for all of that is finding parts at an affordable price, which is where my buddy Brian from Classic G-Body Garage stepped up to the plate and hit a total home run. And Mail does this. Now in here, there should be a used, oops, I cut the sticker, no, the brake pedal assembly and vacuum booster we need to convert this car over to vacuum brakes. Really well packaged too. Yep, there's our booster. Here's a t-shirt, hell yeah, bonus point. Here's the hose to run the booster. Here is the giant brake pedal. So it goes without saying, absolutely massive thank you to Brian from Classic G-Body Garage. He's been a good friend of mine for a long time. He has an Instagram page you can follow and a YouTube channel you guys can follow if you're into these G-Bodies and want more G-Body content, tips, how-to, and restoration videos. He's got a pretty sweet collection of these things. Either way, let's start taking all the old stuff out so the new stuff can go in. Alright, so there's the big sad that is currently on the car. And a lot of times the problem is this hydraulic accumulator right here. We've already replaced this switch, it didn't do anything. Sometimes the motor goes bad, and like as you can see, like I mentioned, that thing is a rusty pile of dookie. We're just gonna assume it's all broken and throw it all away so that the family does not have any more problems with this car, because remember, this is not our car. It's going back to the owner at the end of the video, and I want them to let this sit for a year, get it out, and be able to drive it reliably. And one of the most important aspects for them to be able to do that is the brake system, which is why we've redone everything, because if it doesn't build all the boost or it doesn't run quite right, that's okay. They're not going to get hurt if they can't go fast enough. They're going to have problems if they can't stop. I don't really know anything about what I'm about to do, so I have no advice to give to you guys. So I'm not going to film it. I'm just going to snap my fingers and hope that it magically all disappears and we get a brake booster installed. And then when it's done, I'll tell you what I learned.
Oh no, I have been spotted.
What's up, Mook?
I'm here supervising.
Good supervisor.
Uh-oh, we're dumb.
Hey, there's some under dash work that needs done. Do you want to do that?
Absolutely not. I'm supervising. Get to work. Get under that dash.
Alrighty, this went pretty well. There were a couple things I would have totally forgot about, like the internal rod between the master and the booster, and the hose to run our vacuum booster. So thank you very much, Brian at Classic G-Body Garage, for thinking about that for me. He included everything we needed in that box. So once again, check him out on YouTube and Instagram, Classic G-Body Garage. Either way, I've got our master bled, so we'll get these hoses hooked up and bleed some brakes. All right, at this point I have the front bled and the other rear bled. I'm down to the last one. I'll use this one to show you guys what you're gonna do. First thing you're gonna do, as you can tell, is open it up and let it gravity bleed. And you can see we already have fluid moving. What you need is just a pop bottle with a piece of clear rubber hose. The clear part is crucial so you can see when the bubbles are done flowing down the hose. You're not going to be able to look at the pop can or pop bottle and tell when that's happening. It needs to be right up here at the source. So what I'm going to be doing is I have Mook inside controlling the pedal. She's going to be pushing it up and down. I am checking the reservoir level often. So the last thing you want to do is get air in that master after you've bled it and have to re-bleed it. So keep an eye, or have a third person keep an eye on that reservoir level. All I am doing is acting as a one-way valve. I'm going to say down, she will go down. I will open this, let fluid out. I will close this and say up, and she will go up. And then we will repeat. You're simply just moving fluid down the line. Down. She'll call out when she's all the way down. Up. Down. Up, down. What we're looking for is bubbles. Up. Alright, we've done that a few times. I got a bunch of brake fluid dripping on my pants. How's it feel, Mook? Give it a couple pumps. Go down. Hey, those are brakes. Go back up. And down. Oh, feels good. Alright, and that's all it takes to bleed brakes. Just remember, keep an eye on your reservoir and just continue doing that until you see no more bubbles. It will take a while to do all 4 cylinders, especially when the lines are dry, if you don't gravity bleed them first, which I suggest. It doesn't always work. You won't always get fluid. It's actually, on older shit, it's pretty rare you get fluid to move with gravity bleeding, but it does at least give that first 8 inches of line some fluid so you're not immediately pulling air back into the reservoir. Alright, we should have a completely replaced brake system with the exception of a few hard lines, but I have inspected them all and they all look good. So at this point, let's put some wheels on and move on to seeing if we can make this thing finally make boost. Alrighty, so with the exception of the actual vacuum line for the booster, our brake system is finally done. Now for that line, they make a plate that sits right here on top of the throttle body that is basically this guy with an extra fitting. Well, now so is this. I drilled a hole, threaded it in there, and for good measure, covered everything in JB Weld. You can buy these actually manufactured out of metal for 55 bucks online, or potentially you can do this, we'll see. So like I said, our next step is to chase down the boost issue, which over the course of the summer, we went to a lot of car shows and I asked a lot of questions, and I think I've got it figured out. As we know from episode 1, we do have a pretty good sized vacuum leak on these throttle shaft seals, so I am going to go in here and replace those, but that is not our problem. A lot of people in the comments said they think the wastegate is the issue, and they think the turbo is bad. Well, the turbo's not bad, it's clearly building boost, and as it turns out, I believe the wastegate is actually also working properly. Our problem, which a few people nailed, is actually this guy right here. This right here is essentially the boost controller for the car. This goes on the passenger valve cover, as you can see, and tees into the wastegate line that runs off of right here. Basically, whatever PSI this compressor housing sees gets sent to here and to the wastegate. And anything above 7 PSI, our wastegate will open. And we are only building 7 PSI of boost, which means everything here is functioning properly. What I believe the issue with this car is that right here we have a 22 bullet stuck in the vent tube for the controller. What this does is bleed off the pressure in this line to the wastegate. So even though this is above 7 PSI, the feed line to our wastegate is getting vented to atmosphere and bleeding off that charge, so the wastegate sees 0 pressure. Now, once this controller says, hey, 14, that's enough, and it closes down, that wastegate will then see the pressure because the valve in here closes and the wastegate will open. But if this is unable to vent off that extra pressure because someone stuck a bullet in it, it's not going to build any boost. So yeah, there you go. I think this has been our problem all along. I mean, we definitely fixed a lot of issues because I think initially this had 4 PSI. We got all the way up to 7. So we definitely fixed a lot of issues along the way, made it spool a lot faster and more reliably and build better boost. But this is our upper end limiting factor. Like I said, I went to a lot of car shows this summer and asked every single person I could that had a Grand National at a car show if I could look at that and where that went to. And the funny thing was no one had any answer what that did besides one dude my age was like, that is your pressure relief valve for the wastegate and it needs to be vented to atmosphere or else this will happen. Every single other old dude that swore that their car was the fastest thing ever had that port hooked up to just the most random shit. I was seeing cars where these two were looped together and this thing was chilling out doing nothing. This was put to vacuum. This was stuck on a bolt somewhere. It was just a complete crapshoot of where that hose went. So unless these guys had some form of adjustable wastegate and just left that chilling on the valve cover for no reason, none of these dudes were building any boost beyond 7 PSI no matter how fast they told me their car was, which I thought was hilarious. Either way, I'm gonna take that throttle body off and get those new seals in there. And then our JB weld should be about ready. Put all that back together, put some tires on this thing, and see what happens. All right, we're getting everything stripped down to where we are at the shaft now. Look at the amount of play on that shaft right there. Yeah, this thing was definitely not sealing after 140,000 miles, believe it or not. I'm gonna pop that the rest of the way out and get some new seals on it. Alrighty, we've got our throttle body all cleaned up and got some new seals in there, looking pretty good. While I was here, I took the liberty to clean out the inside because it was nasty in there. Either which way, a little tip there, those screws are knurled on the back. They are a nightmare to get out. They will want to strip. Be very careful with them, take your time. And then when you put them back in, make sure you Loctite them and tighten the hell out of them because if those fall out, you're gonna have a bad time. Another thing I learned, if you order throttle body seals for one of these cars, order like 4. They are not very strong and they're a pain in the ass to get in. There's a good chance you might heck them up. At this point, we need to wait for our JB weld to set up and then we'll be good to go. Alrighty, there we go. Our JB weld set up. Everything cured up really nice there. Seems to seal up just fine. Got a new vacuum hose, ran to our vacuum booster. While I was working in there, I found this little guy. Check him out. What's up, little buddy? He's definitely seen better days. He looks like he might need some water, which we now have plenty of because today's kind of a rainy, poopy day. We got our wheels bolted back on. Everything should be good to go. I'm gonna hop in this thing, hit the key, and see if she lights off again. It's been a little while since it ran. It had a dead battery, and I pushed it all the way over here. So, yeah, let's see if she comes back to life. Sitting here idling, and it's not jumping all over the place. I think cleaning out that throttle body really made a big difference. Alright, so the big question, even above do we have boost, is do we have brakes, and do we have boosted brakes? Yeah, that runs way better. I did spray a good amount of brake clean in the intake and try to clean a bunch of the crap that was built up in the intake, and I literally pulled chunks like this big out of the intake, and I think that cleaned up some valves and cleaned up some runners, and the car's a lot happier now. Hell yes! Finally, brakes in this car. It's gonna make it so much less sketchy. And they work great. I will have to do a break-in period on those pads. Power stop requests that, so. Oh no. Why did we die? Que paso? What the hell, car? I hear a fuel pump. What is it with every G body we have at the shop? The second I try to pull it out, it breaks. Like, what the hell? Booster works good though, so. All right, let's figure out what's wrong. I swear, sometimes the universe does not want me to be a YouTuber. I just replaced this. This is a brand new lens. Windy ass Iowa, knocking the stupid ass tripod. Ah! It has been a rough summer for camera lenses. I've never even dropped or damaged a camera before, and then sure enough, I say that out loud, and I break 2 in no time at all. So thankfully, I think, and I mean think, these are repairable. So if anyone knows anything about these Panasonic Lumix 12 to 60 lenses, or if anyone has one that they don't want, please email me. I apparently need a pile of them, so I'll try to fix these, but for now, I'm using Mook's lens. Thank you, Mook. Thankfully, everyone who films here uses the same camera, so we can interchange parts. It's kind of part of the plan. So you can pick up any of the 3 cameras and film at any time and interchange parts between them if something happens. And if you're keen, you'll notice that I said 3 cameras. You'll see why next week-ish. All right, let's see if we can get this damn car to run without breaking another lens. All right, got the car pushed back inside. A little bit of diagnosis that showed we have no spark at the coil packs. This is the same thing that happened in the end of the last video. I let the car cool down and it started working again. The car's not hot this time. So I get to go through and check like crank and cam sensors, and supposedly those ignition boxes love to go bad and all sorts of goodies. Alrighty, so I went into the office, got myself this little doodad right here. This is a no start tree, or basically a very, very well written chart that you follow to see why exactly your car is not starting. These exist for a lot of fuel injected cars, especially easy to find for ones that are very problematic, yet popular in forums and such, just like this Grand National. I literally Googled Grand National no start tree and printed off the first document I found. Now, with that being said, all you have to do is follow these directions and understand everything that is saying here to diagnose everything like the crank sensor, cam sensor, ignition control module, all that good stuff. However, wouldn't you know, as soon as I get that printed off, the car's been sitting for a little bit. I walk over to make sure we still have power and start diagnosing everything. And it runs again. And if it ain't one thing, it's everything. I've never been disappointed by a car starting before, but that is a first right there. Alright, well, let's let it sit here and heat soak all the sensors, and then we'll try this again. See if it doesn't start then. Woohoo. The chaos continues. Currently in the middle of diagnosing the alternator, which in the stock setup is ran through that upper right light bulb, which is the volt light. In case the alternator stops working, that should come on, which it's not, even though it's hooked up, so I don't really know what the hell's going on here. But it's known that if that bulb burns out, the alternator will stop charging, which is what I was checking. They sell an aftermarket harness to bypass that in these cars. I'm learning more and more that these cars are like, you know, renowned as being some of the coolest, fastest, best 80s cars, when in reality, they're big piles of shit with a turbo. Like seriously, I mean that. This is the second G-body I've ever worked on. The first one being the diesel. And they were both horrible to work on. And neither of them would make it out the door. They kept breaking constantly. And the diesel, you'd be like, well, yeah, that was the 5.7 diesel. The engine never had a problem once. It still runs today. Everything attached to the engine, to the extent of the paint, was what was having problems so much. And this car's doing the same shit. These are horribly ergonomic and just a mess of wires and old sensors and rudimentary bits and pieces of technology. I mean, that's what they had for technology at the time, but they just suck. The brake system's known to fail. The alternator's known to fail. The ignition system's a pile of junk and known to fail. The amount of major systems on this car that are common known failure problems is mind-boggling. Like, you just start searching something on Google and the rest of it pops up in like 20 forum posts about, yep, here's the entire write-ups of how to go through everything you're about to do because everyone has these problems, because these cars actually kind of suck. I'm excited to see it running, if we can get it running and charging and working properly. Excited to see it perform, but Yeah, no, so far that ain't happening. What do you think, Mook?
Oh, I've been spotted!
And on that note, I was in the middle of diagnosing the alternator when sure enough, what now? Bud, we've lost spark and the car doesn't run anymore. So which means I cannot diagnose the alternator because I need it running to do that. But I can go back to diagnosing the ignition system, which is where I started. Yeah, so I'm gonna go get that no start tree and start working my way through that. Hopefully, by the time this cools off and magically runs again, I can have it diagnosed prior. 1980s technology was rough.
I know.
Alright, so according to this no start tree, does the service engine soon light come on with the key on? And are the injectors firing? And the answer is yes, because I already know there's no spark on any plugs. So I can go yes, 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 blah, 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 no spark on all. Check connection 839 to the terminal M for open circuit. If the circuit is okay, it's a faulty module or connection. So module M is the third. It's a pink and black wire. And we can come in here and find our pink and black wire right there, as you can see. And I tested this circuit for open, and it was not open. And just to verify that I was reading that right, I tested the third from this side, and it's also not open. All our circuits appear to be okay, which according to that tree is a bad ignition module. I would have to agree. This thing is right here, right next to the intake. It's getting cooked. It's probably done. I have no idea why the hell they would have one of these in stock, but O'Reilly's has one of these in stock in town. So let's go get it, put that on there, and see if that fixes it. All right, we got our ignition coil packed and our old ignition module off and separated. Before we put the new ignition module on, we need to verify that our coil pack is good. We're going to go to the bottom of the coil pack here and test our primary windings. And we should be between 0.4 and 1.1 ohm. Everything looks good. Alright, we'll flip her over and test our secondary windings. And we should be between 6 to 12 and a half. A little high. Definitely high. And a little high. They're all almost somewhat equally high. So I'm going to say they're probably honestly still okay. But we're going to keep that in mind because if we have any more troubles with this, this is going to be the first place we look. I'm really missing carbureted cars right now. Like if this thing was carbureted, it would have been on the road, everything fixed for a month and a half. Alrighty, our new module is on. Let's see if this sucker fires up. Let's find out. Trying to figure out what that ticking noise is. It's like we just had a lifter tick develop. It'd be a real shame if I was almost done with this damn thing. Running better and better. I think that module is definitely on its way out. We'll find out. Hopefully we have that sorted out now. We still do not have an alternator, so I need to play with that a little bit. I don't think the alternator's bad. I think there's some weird shit going on with the circuit, so I'll let you guys know what I find. Well, the test I just did off camera says our alternator regulator, at least internally, is kaput. Basically, this is what's inside GM's CS series alternator. We have obviously our case ground and then one big wire going to the battery. Ignore that little red one to S on this car. All we have is L is our charging indicator light. What I did was took a jumper wire and touched S and F at different times with 12 volts and still got no voltage out of our alternator. So I think it actually is shot. Unfortunately, much like the ignition coil, that sumbitch is a spendy. Alrighty, once again, it's the next day. We have parts. We've got our old alternator off, and instead of replacing the regulator, I decided, you know what, I'll spend the $200 and just get a new alternator because of this. Yeah, those bearings are quite unhappy. I was able to save a little bit of money because it turns out you don't have to get a Grand National specific alternator. You can get a 93-6 Buick Roadmaster or Chevy Caprice, and they should fit right on there. With that being said, I did have to pay the full price for the core charge because I'm going to leave the numbers matching alternator with the car for the owner. So let's go ahead and get that bolted on, and that should be about it. We should be ready to drive this. If two things hold together. One being what's left of this radiator hose. It leaks like a hacker, so it's going to have to get fixed before it goes home. Thing number two is the weather. It's been raining for 3 days here in Iowa, and I'm not about to take someone else's boosted Grand National out for its first full boost pull when it's raining. That's a recipe for disaster, and I don't like disaster. And yes, I realize how ironic that is, seeing that I'm working on this car, aka a disaster. So let's put that alternator in, put our dash back together, and then wait the rain out. It's like Friday, 3 o'clock. Alternator still doesn't charge, radiator still leaks, belt probably still slips, but it stopped raining. So we should finally be able to take it up and down the road once. Let's make it happen. All right, Mr. Grand National, let's see it. Ain't bad. Like, actually idles good. Let's take it on the road and see if we have any boost. Oh my gosh, brakes. They work amazing. Oh, that is so nice. Just the slightest application of my toe and we're rocketing to a stop. Oh, it seems a little more eager to throw boost into it earlier now, which makes sense. So this could be it. Let's see if it'll do anything here. All right, there's 7. That little light pole, so jumped right up to where it used to be. Let's see if it'll go higher when we get out on the open road. All right, come on, let's see more than 7. I saw a 9. The slightest little improvement. But you know what? Everything's functioning properly because that made a difference. And it spools quicker and harder now. So I think everything is where we need it to be. This son of a bitch is just so old and so worn out. That might be all it can do to muster up 9 PSI. That was still pretty quick, all things considered. That's the fastest this car's pulled. Let's see if we can brake boost launch this bitch. That is pretty fun. You know what? I saw 10 PSI for a second. I think that's all this turbo has left in it, and all this car has left in it, with all just the wear that's on it. It ran hard for that 10 PSI though, so I don't want to, we're not at full boost, but I think for this car, we have full boost finally. That's just, we fixed so many things, and that is all she's gonna give us. This car has put me through the ringer to bring 10 PSI out of it, but now when the 10 PSI hits, it's here now and it's here hard. Versus before it was stand in the throttle and wait and wait and wait for just nothing to eventually evolve. Now as soon as we start building heat, we're building boost. That's fun. That's impressive for a 40-year-old V6. And I could spend more time and way more money and try to fix this boost issue to bring it to a factory 14 PSI or whatever it should be reading. But at that point, we're going to be putting so much boost through an old worn out motor that it's going to be doing more harm than good. It's going to drastically shorten the life of this car and probably end up melting the top end of this motor. And remember, that's not what we're trying to do. We're not trying to make a stupid fast car. We're trying to bring a family's Grand National back to life so they can enjoy it. And in order for that to happen, it needs to be reliable. In order for it to be reliable, I need it to not be running as hard as it possibly can. So this is honestly about perfect. At this point, it's just a matter of fixing the exhaust, fixing this damn headliner, and cleaning up the interior, cleaning up the exterior, fixing the alternator, fixing the radiator, and finally getting to see the owner do some boosted pulls in his car once again. And some real boosted pulls at that, not whatever he was doing before, which would have been, I think, 4 PSI, and now we're at pretty much 10. And with that, we have to return. As you'll notice, much better idle quality. I mean, much better. And it's well up to temp now, and it has not shut off or stuttered or lost power once. So I think that ignition control module really truly was the problem, which is great. That thing sounds awesome. That is too fun. So unfortunately, my plans for this video fell through because, you know, G-body things. So like I mentioned, we're going to have to extend this into a 4th episode where we will finish all the little odds and ends on the car to make this thing reliable and clean to the best of my ability. It's going to be a lot of work. This thing is disgusting. But once that is done, we will be returning this car to its owner and we'll get to see him enjoy his car once again, which I am really excited to see. I've been talking to the family. The entire family is totally jazzed about this, and they're so excited to see their car up and running again. I'm gonna go edit this video, put it together, get it out for you guys to see, and then start pulling parts off this and get it ready for hopefully next week, episode 4, the Grand National goes home. So make sure you guys subscribe to see that. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like for all the suffering and torment I had to go through to get this one done. It sucked, but they always do. So it is work. This job is work, but it has its benefits. Like getting to meet our fans and see the impact we've made on the car culture. It's amazing. We love it. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, consider subscribing, leave a like, leave a comment. We'll see you guys right here next week for another episode of Grand National Boosted Goodness on Junkyard Digs. Peace.